Happy Super Bowl Sunday to all. I am Sam Fetterman here with Nico, and we are going to take you through the next 2 hours of NFL coverage on Super Bowl Sunday for the 6th annual Sam Fetterman Super Bowl special. This started as a 4-hour special a couple of years ago. It's no longer that long, but Nico, how excited are you to be back on Super Bowl Sunday talking ball?
It's great, man. We've got good guests. We're going to cover a lot of different subjects. It's going to be a good time, for sure.
And so the first thing we're going to discuss here, we've got Jackson Powers on at JPowNFL on Twitter. Make sure you throw him a follow. He is the man, and he is going to talk to us about the state of the league. Just kind of go through the stuff we learned this year about the NFL, stuff we learned, where we are as a league schematically, where we are as a league culturally, where we are as a league in general. And I'm going to start here with Nico, because I know Nico has some takes on this. Nico, what was the main thing that we learned this year from the NFL?
Yeah, I feel like this year in the NFL, we're kind of at the climax of the effects of the increase in too high coverage. Like, I really think we are. And that's kind of what Vic Fangio started. Funny enough, he's the defensive coordinator in this game. And I just feel like we have never seen quarterbacking at in such a conservative way and in such a methodical way. But more importantly, we haven't seen the run game be this valuable in a while. I mean, you look at the three most productive running backs in the league this year was probably Saquon, Derrick Henry, and Jahmyr Gibbs. And I mean, Saquon and Derrick Henry had such ridiculous seasons. And I feel like those signings were made in the offseason sort of to tap into this trend and be ahead of the curve from others moving forward. And I think we're going to see more of that as the way defenses play continues to be this way. And I think I really think the run game has been the story of this year. And a lot of these scrambling quarterbacks have also been a big part of that. I mean, we looked at the conference finalists and all of them just run the ball at a really high success rate. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from the
JPow, do you agree that we are at the climax of the too high safeties movement in the NFL?
I do. Nico kind of took the words out of my mouth with that question. Like, when you say, what have we learned from the league this year? I was going to say, run the damn football, dude. Like, look at how many teams in the playoffs are just thriving off of the run game. We saw a few years ago, we saw a version of the Bills team where it was like they couldn't do anything outside of Josh Allen. And then they fire Ken Dorsey and hire Joe Brady. And, like, look at them now. Like, they are obviously still running through Josh Allen, because when you have a Josh Allen, that needs to be the focal point of your offense. But at the same time, they've got a James Cook, they've got a Ray Johnson that they can hand the ball off to and kind of ease that pressure off of. And they're still remaining explosive through that matter. Like, you look at the teams in the playoffs, kind of feels like Kansas City is the one outlier in terms of teams who are not very good at running the ball. And you kind of get to do that when you have a Patrick Mahomes on your team, right? Not every other team has that luxury. And so you look at all the other really strong teams in the playoffs this year, the Lions, the Eagles, the Ravens, the Bills, like all of them. Washington is another really good example with Jaden Daniels and his legs. Yeah, dude. Like, so many teams.
The top 6 teams in rushing yards this year all made the playoffs. Now, I wouldn't say that's necessarily surprising, considering the teams that get out and get leads will run the ball more. But you look at Baltimore, over 3,000 rush yards, Philly over 3,000 rush yards, Washington over 2,600 rush yards. These are also teams with good quarterbacks that are running the ball a ton. And the running game is becoming it's always been a huge part for the Ravens and the Eagles in this era with these quarterbacks, with Jalen Hurts and with Lamar Jackson. The run game has been extremely important to what those teams do. But it's just as now those teams get elite running backs, it adds another dimension to what you have to game plan for. And JPow, I kind of stole your thunder there. Keep going.
No, you're good. I kind of was wrapping it up. I was going to say, like, going back to what Nico said about the too high stuff, like, ever since 2017 or 18, whenever Mahomes came into the league and won MVP, teams have had to game plan for the explosive pass play through the air. And I know in a lot of people's minds that kind of ruined the game of football, right? We got the ever famous Mel Kiper quote that cover two should be banned from.
What happened to the game I love?
Yes, dude, this is not the game that I remember. Which I thought was really funny, obviously, but like it makes sense, right? Because the explosive plays are what brings so many people to love football. And when you're playing two high safeties, especially through the air, you're kind of eliminating that. And the counter to that is, like Nico said, like be methodical, take what's given to you, run the football. And we're starting to see kind of that end of the cycle get figured out towards the offensive side of the ball again, which I think is really, really interesting.
How do you counter this as a defense now? How do you can't stop playing two high safeties, can you?
I don't know, dude. It's a very cyclical league. I know that maybe it's a thing where you run more base. Maybe it is a thing where you kind of start running more one high safety stuff. Because you kind of need to, as a defense, the way you game plan against an opposing offense is you need to take away their fastball and then let them kind of move towards the curveball, the changeup, whatever that may be. Like in terms of the sake of the Super Bowl, like I guarantee you, Spags is going to try and totally remove Saquon from this game. What does the Eagles' response need to be? Like, let Jalen Hurts drop back and get the ball into the hands of A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Like, you got to force them to beat you through their secondary measures. Yeah. And so I think like if the run game is really starting to work for teams on offense, like that needs to be more so your focal point as a defensive coordinator than the passing attack if most of their explosion is not coming through the air.
I don't disagree, but like just to play a little devil's advocate here. Would you agree that the level of quarterback, the talent level of the average quarterback in the league is significantly higher than it's really ever been in the past?
Oh yeah, dude. Like,
would you agree that the talent level of the average wide receiver is higher than it's ever been?
Yes, especially receiver.
I know this is like Nico's magnum opus take that.
Yeah.
I wish I could say that for my football team. We haven't.
I had high hopes for Javon Baker, man. I don't know what happened there.
Well, Demario Douglas isn't bad.
No, he's
Travis Hunter soon.
Cornerstone. That was my take after the
man can dream about Travis Hunter on the New England Patriots, but the level of talent for both quarterbacks and receivers is higher than ever. Now, I will also say the level of talent for the average cornerback is probably also higher than ever. The average talent for any position in football is higher than ever. Would you agree?
Except for kickers.
Yes. Well, actually, no, I would disagree. The average talent level for a kicker is higher. 55 yarders.
I mean, I guess you are right. I mean, the guys
if you're not consistently making 50+ yard field, if you're not consistently making 50+ yard field goals in the NFL now, you are not going to have a job next week.
That's a good point. That is.
But yeah, you're right. So I think that if you do stop playing such strong too high coverages, the better quarterbacks and the better receivers of the NFL than there were 7-8 years ago are going to be able to torch that. Now, it's the league rules have always skewed towards offense, and the league has been moving for the last 40 years, 45, 50 years in a direction that's honestly the progression of the NFL since day one has been moving towards offense. The cycles just kind of slow that down. Yeah. I don't know what the next cycle is. I'm not Nico. I'm not J-Pow. I don't watch as much film as you do. Nico, what is your solution?
Okay. I mean, I will say something kind of interesting. I think most people's assumption is just that the run game is going to be so effective that teams are just going to say, screw it, we're putting extra defenders in the box, single high is back. But if you actually look, 2 of the top 3 run defenses in rush EPA were the Eagles and the Bills. And those are both 2 very too high heavy defenses. And so they're able to stop the run with their nickels on the field. And it is possible. It is possible. If you have really good personnel at the second level of your defense, and I think some people have made some really cool breakdowns on the Eagles and Zach Bond specifically, and
Yes,
how
I
he's
was gonna
defending
ask.
2 gaps at once. So it is possible if you can get those really instinctual run defenders on your team. Like if teams start finding more of the Cooper DeJeans in the draft, and teams start finding more of the guys with Zach Bond's brain in free agency, like it is possible, but that might just be Howie Roseman's greatness. But it is possible. I mean, we're seeing multiple teams in the league combat this while still adhering to the trend of combating quarterback play.
And I remember when Zach Bond was coming out of the draft, and we were all talking about how instinctual he was coming out of Wisconsin. I do think what I want to get your take on this. Do you think that the run-stopping linebacker, the Zach Bond archetype, there's obviously not a ton of guys that are excellent run-stopping linebackers out there to that level that can really change a defense. But do you think teams are going to be looking for more of that in the draft? And do you see any guys in this year's draft that have the ability to kind of change a defense and allow you to be a really good run defense playing too high?
I mean, I haven't scouted linebackers yet, but I do still think like Zach, even with Zach Bond, like if he didn't cover as well as he did too, like he probably just wouldn't be on the field right now in a Super Bowl. So I think like it's easy to just say find guys who can do both, but I still do think that kind of is the way it's going to be because we're seeing guys like the Bobby Wagners of the world, like they're just going to get attacked, like that's why he got ran out of Seattle in the first place.
Yeah.
And then my question for you: what position do you think is lagging behind the most in talent in the NFL right now, and how do you think that is affecting the way that kind of all of the game is played?
That's a good question.
Would you say it is the linebacker?
I don't think so, to be honest. I think it might be tight end. I think tight end. I mean, like we've got our Brock Bowers of the world.
I agree.
But like there aren't many tight ends that can do both things at a high level right now. Like there just aren't. And that's why guys coming into the league like Tyler Warren are going to be so valued. Like even Brock Bowers is not like the most outstanding blocker. And there just aren't many talents like George Kittle. Like when you look at other
we
positions,
don't have those types anymore.
No, I might sound like an old head here, but when you look at positions around the league, there are a lot of guys at every position that do everything well, and I just don't know if that's the case at the tight end position.
I think part of that, Nico, is just what the ask of a tight end is.
Yeah, I mean that's
it's the combination of being an offensive tackle and being a wide receiver. Like that is not normal. That's like asking a baseball player to be a third baseman and a right fielder at the same time. Like that's just it's two completely different skill sets. Nothing about those two positions is the same. Meanwhile, like a cornerback, it's still instinctual stuff. Like a lot of the stuff is instinctual at a lot of different places. You are doing completely different things with the way you move your body and the way that you think the game when you're playing tight end. So I think I would agree with that, but I don't know if that's affecting the game as much, say, versus the idea of like the league would be lagging behind. I think that's kind of the position where the league can afford to be lagging behind in talent in terms of moving forward the game, because it just makes having an elite tight end a bonus rather than something that the league is looking at as like a schematic blow to not have that. J-Pow, what are your thoughts on the tight end discussion here?
I think in terms of like just where we lack as a position, Nico probably is right at the tight end spot because we had a great era of tight ends in the, Kittle, Kelsey, like all those guys, and they're just kind of starting to age out of it. And we haven't really quite replenished the position with the next generation of talent quite yet. And like this class, might be the start of that because this is a very, very good tight end class.
Colston Loveland in there, Harold Fannin, who I know
Harold Fannin,
college football heads is the greatest person.
Colston Loveland, Idaho product. My main man.
He's from Idaho.
He's from Riggins.
Where's Riggins?
It's like 4 hours north of.
Oh, come on, that's not.
The Boise.
So wait, is that near Moscow or is that still?
I might be wrong. He might not be from Riggins, but no, it's not quite at Moscow yet. Moscow is probably like 6.5 or 7 hours north.
See, you people live in these ridiculously big states. I mean, I live in a pretty big state in New York.
Yeah.
It says here that Fannon's from Canton, Michigan.
Well, that's because we're talking about Loveland.
Oh, we're talking about Loveland? Colson Loveland is from Goldendale, Washington. He grew up on a farm in Bliss, Idaho. How does this guy not end up?
Yeah. I was gonna say I mixed it up because Leighton Vander Esch was from Riggins.
That's what I was about to say. How is this not the next Leighton Vander Esch story?
Yeah.
Where he's playing 8-man football in high school.
Yeah, dude, he was a baller.
He was so good for like 3 years, and then
he had like a neck injury, man. He's like
so good.
Yeah,
like him and Sean Lee, the Cowboys couldn't catch a break with these linebackers that were incredible players, but kept getting hurt.
Guess who was their coach? Demon Matt Eberflus, and he's back.
Oh!
He's back.
Okay. But keep going with the tight end stuff.
Yes, yeah. Like I do think in terms of just like the 32 guys that are out there for each NFL team, tight end probably is the weakest position right now. But kind of like you said, Sam, like tight end very much feels like more of a luxury than it does a schematic necessity, right? And so I think if you're looking at positions that are very much kind of debilitating teams, I would point to either the interior offensive line or the linebacker spot, because we have seen teams, especially this year, who just cannot stop the run and are biting at play action. And it sets up so many different things that kind of puts your defense right back on its heels, that if you don't have a strong linebacking core, and a lot of really good teams like the Bengals and the Texans don't have a strong linebacking core, like that's a lot of the reason for their struggles, in my opinion.
Interesting thought there. Nico, do you have anything to add?
I mean, I think the interior offensive line is a great point now that I think about it, because I mean, we saw multiple pretty hyped preseason teams in the Bears or the Seahawks just get destroyed by their lack of interior offensive line play.
Anthony Bradford, man.
Yeah, Anthony Bradford. I mean, I probably talked too much trash about some of those guys, but for my Smith agenda. But I mean, when you really think about these last few draft classes have not been good in terms of offensive line in general, but specifically, like, we just have not seen that many great guards enter the league in a while. And I mean,
where are the Quentin Nelson types?
Yeah, I mean, they don't make them like the Quinn Miners.
And they don't even make Quentin Nelson like Quentin Nelson anymore.
Yeah, I mean, really and truly, 2021 is like the latest draft that's actually fueling the league with talent up front, and I think like that's a very big deal. That's a very big deal, because the quickest way to ruin a passing play is interior pressure. So yeah, I mean, 100%. I think Jackson is right now that I think about it.
Yeah, and what do you think teams can kind of do schematically, or team? What do you think teams have done schematically to avoid those types of problems?
Well, I mean, I think one thing that could sort of explain it is a lot of the Shanahan schemes, like they just draft solely guys who move well and block the run, and they don't really care as much about pass protection as much as a guy being able to get out in space and pull, for instance. And so they run a very quick passing scheme, like we see in Miami. Like, Tua is just starting it to the middle of the field, like immediately he has one of the lowest times to throw in the league, and that's the way the offense is designed. So I think that's really the Shanahan scheme right now. It's like you get a bunch of smaller guys who can move well up front, besides like Trent Williams. Like he's the magnus opus of I can't even say that. Magnum opus of like a Shanahan lineman. But that's kind of the way.
The magnum opus of a lineman.
And like all of his disciples are getting hired around the league, and they're having that influence in terms of drafting. Like I do think that's sort of a trend. Like that's one of the things that people thought might be a meta in terms of running a quick passing game, especially against these two high coverages, and just saying that we're going to compensate for poor pass protection, especially in the interior, with a really low time to throw. So I will be interested to see, as some of these Shanahan schemes have clearly hit a wall this season. I'd say that's somewhat of a story of this season.
Yeah, and I wanted to get into that too. We are seeing Shanahan schemes hit a wall. Do you think that this is a wall, or is it a wall with a door?
I think it's a wall with a door. I think some of these teams are just getting exposed in the sense that their personnel was never amazing to begin with. Like Miami, I think that's kind of the story of Miami. Like, it took a couple years, but now people are really seeing, like, we're not very strong up front. We don't have a tight end that can block. Like, we don't have really like tough interior linemen. And I guess that is sort of a fault of just how like Mike McDaniel probably has been okay with this team being assembled. But if better guard talent enters the league, if more versatile tight ends, like if we can just get like George Kittle, zero sugar in the league, like if we can get more of those guys, like that's what it's
George Kittle.
Diet George Kittle.
Diet George Kittle. I was trying to go even below Diet George Kittle, but like if we can just get some of those
George Kittle, Baja Blast.
If we can get frozen Baja Blast zero, George Kittle's in the league. I think these Shanahan schemes can get going again. And I also like in Houston, like that was a big problem in Houston is their tight ends. Once the GOAT Brevin Jordan got hurt, their tight ends are all like
the first NFL player to recognize you.
Yeah, I mean, after he went down, it was just very apparent that the Texans have like a bunch of fake receivers at tight end, and I mean, like they couldn't fulfill their blocking assignments. And that's
it was clear the Texans' offense could not operate without GOAT Brevin Jordan.
Yes. But
this has quickly turned unserious.
Truly though, like some of these Shanahan offenses might be fine if they can just get a little bit bigger while still having got capable receivers. Like we might see them get a little slower moving forward, a little less dynamic, but it might be for the better. And also more fullbacks are needed.
Why do you think that?
Because they're a pretty big part of the Shanahan scheme, and some of these teams that run it don't have like a real fullback. Like
now, like, are there real, like there's Kyle Juszczyk, but like are there really real fullbacks remaining? Because like college schemes don't use fullbacks anymore. High school schemes don't use fullbacks anymore. So kids aren't growing up playing.
No. But I think like there are bodies in the NFL capable if a coaching staff wanted to like if a coaching staff wanted to mold like a certain type of athlete, like it is possible. Like
give me a couple names.
A lot of people are saying Harold Fannin, and I actually might agree that Harold Fannin could be a good.
I've seen way too many cool catch highlights from him to let him play full. I've seen way too many sick catches from him to let him play fullback.
Yeah, I think the athletic profile is like the main attraction with him, like the ability to kind of run routes and get downfield. I'm not wasting that in the backfield, man.
H-back team and Harold Fannin. I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying that might be a solution for Shanahan schemes is just to get a little more physical and like stop trying to have it both ways in a sense. Like I mean, the Niners are like the peak of drafting versatile, like really physical athletes, and not every team's going to be able to replicate that. But if they emphasize more physicality to sacrifice some of that finesse, like that's probably the next shift for them.
I like that thought. I do like that thought. And then looking at this draft class, I know J-Pie, you've done a lot more with this draft than Nico. Are there any kind of archetypes at certain positions that you think are becoming that you think this draft does really well with, does really poorly with, something that the league needs more of, something that the league needs less of? Just what would be your initial thought? Because I remember a couple of years ago we kept talking about those small shifty receivers where there were like 30 of them in one draft class.
Yes. Yeah.
And then the next year there was like one.
They
Yeah,
have not
dude.
looked-
I think if you're looking at position wise, like the strengths of this draft are going to be running back, interior defensive line, and tight end. And I know we've talked a lot about the tight end spot, but kind of the hybrid guys that can go in and both block and be a true weapon in the receiving game. I think that's going to be really, really valuable, right? Because like you don't want a guy that you have to take off the field in certain situations in 11 personnel, right? Like you want a guy that you can run the ball with 3 receivers on the field and be a true extension of the offensive line. But you don't also want him to kind of tip your pitches and let him know that this is a guy like when he's on the field, you're going to run or you're going to pass, right? So I think that those kind of hybrid guys coming out are going to be really, really strong. Fannin is a guy that immediately comes to mind. I think that of Warren. I love Colston Loveland, but I think he probably is going to be more of a true receiving tight end, like the Brock Bowers archetype. And I think he could go really early given just how productive Brock Bowers was this year. But I think that he isn't quite someone who's going to dominate in the blocking game. So yeah, that's really where I would point to in terms of like the archetype of guys that's going to kind of come in and make have a real rookie sensation as a position.
Ooh, all right. And then the last thing that I kind of wanted to go over with you, J Powell, is just kind of what we've been talking about, but for college football. What have you seen at the college level? Do you think the NFL schemes have trickled down to college? Do you think college is playing a completely different style? And how do you think that can impact the NFL?
That's a very good question. I do think that schemes, they kind of, I think where I would point to like the biggest difference is the way that linebackers are run in the in college football, right? A lot of these big schools like can go out and recruit the big athletes up front, where they don't really need as much run defense from the linebacker position. So you see a lot of linebackers coming out that are almost like safeties nowadays. I kind of point to JOK is like the main example to me of like the guys who are only,
He was also a nickel corner, so
was he?
He could do
it.
He
was.
Ryan Asamoah. I just remember being obsessed with
Ryan Asamoah. What a pull. Yeah, dude. Like you're not seeing as many of the like Leo Chenals. Like it's a lot of guys who are very small and are more
you know where Leo
geared
Chenal went to
towards
school.
Huh?
You know where Leo Chenal went to school? The same school as Zach Vaughn.
Oh yeah, Demon, Wisconsin.
Wisconsin and those linebackers. Wisconsin's good at developing like certain positions.
Linebackers and running backs, man.
This needs
and they I can't remember, but I feel like I remember them doing really well with tackles at one point.
It was more interior.
Was it interior?
They had a good run with interior.
Well, I just know that they don't do that. They probably do pretty well with quarterbacks who don't have any of their teammates at their birthday party. Like I still like that. Like there is no way that draft worked out well for Cleveland. Like, straight up, that like Sonny Weaver Jr. saved football in Cleveland by trading 3 second-round picks, taking an off-ball. I know they said he was an off-ball linebacker, but he was definitely an edge rusher, and a running back in the top 10, and trading for a punt returner. Like, there's no way that worked out well.
Yeah,
Nico Harris. What they don't tell you in draft day is that Brian Drew suffered another knee injury in week 4 the next season, and the Browns went 4-12, and Sonny got fired.
Yeah, Demon Putney coming in as the punt returner to save the franchise.
I can't tell you if Bo Callahan won 4 MVPs. They
didn't because he wasn't good under pressure. And
although I will say,
tape revealed.
Like, we don't know. The only thing we know about Brian Drew is that they were 5-2 before he got hurt.
I don't remember.
That doesn't mean he's necessarily good or bad.
I don't remember.
I mean, we've seen teams with not great quarterbacks be better with their not great quarterback.
I mean, the Bears in 2020 started 5-2 with
Nick Foles.
Foles.
Yeah. All right.
Matt
Back
Nagy's
to
work.
what you were saying, J Pal.
I mean, that's pretty much it, right? Because like the linebacker position, I think that's part of why we kind of talked about it as a weakness, is just because like the way that they're developing the athletes in college is not necessarily setting them up for the NFL level, right? Because in college you don't need the 240-pound bruiser who who can get downhill and defend the run at a really high level. You only need a guy who's 225, 230 in there who can be really rangy
Yes.
and kind of drop into, a Tampa 2 gap. And obviously that's really important at the NFL level, but these guys are getting washed in the run game. That's where you see like the Ivan Paces, the JOKs, obviously, like I mentioned, like that's kind of the biggest discrepancy for me in between college football and the NFL.
All right, J Pal, one last thing before you go. I know I said that last time. You watch a lot of film. What is your favorite play that you watched on film this year?
Ooh, I watched the Vikings game earlier. I know that there's been a lot of mesh slander out there from a certain creator, but I watched the Vikings run mesh where they replaced Aaron Jones and Justin Jefferson, where they had Justin Jefferson coming out of the backfield running the rail route as the running back, and then Aaron Jones on the field running the drag route. And the deep, like just that kind of slight little tweak, you could see it kind of messed up like the defense's assignments. And I thought that was really sweet because, you want a guy to really be able to get vertical out of that running back spot on mesh. And obviously Justin Jefferson is a better vertical threat than Aaron Jones is. And, off of that drag route, you want a guy that can kind of make the catch and turn upfield. That's a really good role for Aaron Jones, who, has kind of made his money as a receiving back. So just like that little tweak in personnel made me really think like, wow, like Kevin O'Connell is doing more than just kind of like looking at the X's and O's of things. He's putting guys in a spot where they can maximize like what they do as weapons. And so I really love that just like slight little adjustment running mesh. And it did score a touchdown, by the way. I can't remember which I can't remember, dude. It was early.
I don't actually remember that play, but I do know that they were a very mesh heavy offense.
Yes. Yeah. I know, just like that slight little adjustment. It was very early. It's probably in my Twitter feed.
It was probably the Niners game or something.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah. I don't know. I could search my Twitter profile and find it, but I'm not going to do all that.
All right, J Pal, thank you so much for coming on. If you don't follow him at JPal NFL on Twitter, great follow. All the draft talk will be coming from him over the next couple of months. Thank you so much for coming on. And
I appreciate it.
Who's winning tonight?
I knew I was going to say, I remember this last year that we had. I think Kansas City, I fear, because I score. Ooh. I think we're looking at a lower scoring affair than we saw between these two teams beforehand. I think we're looking at
you're really taking a risk with that one. The teams aren't going to score 73 points this time.
Well, I mean, this is not the Kansas City team that we're used to seeing, and Philly has like as good of a defense as we've seen in the last few years. I'm going to say 24-20 Kansas City.
And MVP?
Patrick Mahomes, man.
Kareem Hunt.
Yeah. Leo Chenal.
Yeah, it's gonna be.
People forget how close we were to Nick Bolton Super Bowl MVP 2 years ago.
True, that is true. If Mahomes hadn't had the fake injury for the Aura boost, he wouldn't have.
Yeah. The Pfizer boosted.
All right, J Pal. Thank you so much.
All right, I appreciate you, boys.
Yeah, man, it was a pleasure.
Yeah.
All right. Nico, are you ready to bring on our first team guest?
Absolutely.
We have the man himself, Henry Sklar, coming on straight from Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
How's it going?
To talk about his Philadelphia Eagles. Sklar, first of all, nice win for the Tide last night.
I was going to say for my intro, I got my Crimson Tide victory candle burning right here. morning after tradition. It's kind of been a generational week for me. It was my birthday on Tuesday, and then Alabama won last night. Now we have a chance to win the Super Bowl. So,
Who has it better than you?
Dude, I just hope they win. Just hope they win.
I can't believe that we're still a week away from the first Alabama-Auburn game. That's going to be such a fun one. That place is going to be absolutely rocking. It could be like, it's probably going to be like number 2 versus number 3, maybe number 1 versus number 3, number 1 versus number 2. It could be something like that. I don't know what the AP poll is going to shake out. Like, I honestly don't care. But for anybody that hasn't gotten into college basketball yet this year, you're going to have a really good time watching Alabama-Auburn next Saturday.
It's going to be so much fun. It's going to be so much fun.
All right, so let's talk about the Philadelphia Eagles. 2 years ago, the Eagles make the Super Bowl. They come so close to winning the second ring of the Howie Roseman era, or the first ring of part 2 of the Howie Roseman era.
Our lives.
Yeah.
Our lives.
Of the last 10 years. Like, because it was not that long ago that the Eagles' future looked like it was Carson Wentz, and the Eagles' future looked like it was through that core, and they took a complete U-turn, and it's worked really well. This doesn't happen every day. Howie Roseman has done a really good job with his core. He's made some mistakes, but he's also had some huge hits. And here we are 2 years later with the Eagles in the same spot against the same team, with a chance to kind of make up for, obviously not make up for the loss, but with a chance to pull back and
avenge,
even the score in this series. Set up for a rubber match game now. So what do you think the Eagles learned from that Super Bowl loss 2 years ago that they put into their team building approach over these next 2 years, Henry?
Ooh, I mean, honestly, a lot of that roster is still the same. Of course, there's some core players that aren't here that were on the Eagles in 2022, like Javon Hargrave, some of the offensive linemen retired. Like a lot of those guys are still here. Like, and that's one thing that I think is going to be big in this game. I had a shower thought this morning, more on a personal note. Like, out of the 3 Super Bowls I've seen the Eagles be in over the last 8 years, this has probably been like, I mean, I'm not the least excited. This season just kind of feels like a fever dream, just because so many all the roster moves that we made over the offseason, bringing in Saquon Barkley, bringing in Zach Vaughn, revamping Mekhi Becton into a reliable guard, and having like this insane rookie duo in the secondary. It doesn't even feel real. Because I haven't watched these guys over the past few years. They just came onto the Eagles and started balling out. What was your original question about the roster building? I just think everything got better. I don't really think they changed their approach. I mean, they've always kind of had the same approach. They value certain positions. They valued cornerbacks for a while. They've put big money into contracts there. They value the trenches. I guess the one big difference is our linebackers. The Eagles have never had good linebackers in my lifetime. Jordan Hicks was the peak of my watching linebackers on the Eagles probably until this year. And having an all-pro in Zach Bond and then Nakobe Dean before getting hurt, of course, really developing into a guy who can go from sideline to sideline, and watching him blitz is so fun. Maybe not the best coverage player still, but he moves so quick downhill, making tackles. Their linebackers, that's the biggest difference. And you can still see the roster building. They're kind of their philosophy the same, because they still have to extend Zach Bond. And I'm getting nervous every day that we're not going to extend him, just because we don't put value on linebackers like that. They think they're going to find guys, but that's probably the biggest difference, I'd say. I mean, and having a more well-rounded secondary. Growing up, I watched the Eagles make a lot of boneheaded mistakes, paying Byron Maxwell on a 7-year, $80 million contract for no reason. Who are Nnamdi Asomugha back in the day. Our cornerbacks and safeties have never been this good and so well-rounded, and we legitimately have a guy at every position who's competent. So I think that's the biggest difference. There's no incompetence.
the Eagles lost both coordinators after the last Super Bowl run. And that was a coordinator core that a lot of Eagles fans really criticized. And then they learned the hard way because they criticized the next guy even more than that.
I mean, Steichen, I think, had the most peaceful exit of like any playoff losing team ever.
And then
Gannon, on the other hand, had a very ugly exit.
Yeah, Gannon had an ugly exit. But like the whole thing was, I just remember Eagles fans throwing everything on Steichen and everything on Gannon. Anything that went wrong, it was the coordinator's fault. And then whenever they would fail in year one as a head coach, they wouldn't stop talking about it. But okay, they were two very good coordinators that helped the Eagles make the Super Bowl. Now, two completely different coordinators in Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio. How do you think you've seen, obviously Fangio's been around for a while. Kellen Moore has too, but he's still pretty young. Boise State legend.
Had a crazy run considering his age.
I mean, Kellen Moore, like this was a guy I remember watching, and like I remember watching him sling the rock at Boise State. I remember him against Colin Kaepernick. I remember where I was. I was at Buffalo Wild Wings watching him against Colin Kaepernick. That was an all-time great football game. Those Boise State teams were terrific. But back to the point anyway. How have you seen these coordinators grow with the team? And what do you think are the biggest differences between this coordinator core and the one that you went to the Super Bowl with 2 years ago?
Well, I think defensively it's night and day. I mean, I really think Vic Fangio has revolutionized this defense, not only schematically, but with the culture he's kind of instilled there. And a lot of that does go back to Nick Sirianni. I'll harp on that in a second. But, this team is just more experienced. That's the biggest difference going into this game. Having a guy like Fangio who's been around the block, he's coached in Super Bowls before, albeit a while ago. He's been in the arena before, and he just brings that, new level of experience and confidence to this defense that we've had in the past. But, it's on another level now if you really watch this team every year and every game. Offensively, it's tough. I don't know. Like, I guess what I'll say is I hope we don't have an exit like we did with Jonathan Gannon with Kellen Moore and the Saints. I hope I'm not tweeting out after this game that like I'm happy to leave Kellen Moore off the plane in New Orleans and he can get started tomorrow. But
hey,
I
mean, if they don't win, he's probably just going into the office tomorrow.
Listen, like it's obviously like people. You can give credit to Saquon Barkley and the O-line all you want. I mean, but credit to Kellen Moore for leaning into that. We've ran the ball more than any team in the NFL. And, in years past, I mean, I do understand we had DeAndre Swift and Miles Sanders, maybe not some of the most talented backs, but we've had success in the run game in the past. And a lot of times our coaches have just gone away with it. The thing that most impresses me about this offense, and this is the reason I told everybody that I think the Eagles were like the team to beat in the NFC, is that our offense can just win in so many ways. Like the Lions, obviously they were averaging 30 points a game. Like they were boat racing everyone, but you knew that like if their defense doesn't hold up, like there's going to be a team that can outscore them. And that's kind of what happened. And like some of the, like Washington, obviously there's a lot of inexperience with Jaden Daniels, a rookie quarterback. You can go through all the teams and point out weaknesses. After the Steelers game for the Eagles, when I saw Jalen Hurts like throw the ball this year with like confidence, like he stood in the pocket and delivered a lot of great throws that game. Forget how many yards he had, but that was the point where I kind of viewed us as NFC favorites just because I think we can beat you in any way. And that's the thing about Kellen Moore. We can really beat you in any way. We can pass, run, play action, zone, like whatever you want to do, we can do. That's what I think yeah.
So taking me back all the way to September, first game of the season for the Eagles was in Brazil against the Packers.
That was
and you pull out the win. What were your thoughts after watching this Eagles team for the first time this year in that win against the Packers?
Dang, I got to think back. I haven't really thought about that game, I guess. Wow. I think, with this talent going into the year, I expected us to be in a position like this. I expected us to have a really good shot at making the Super Bowl. After that first game, I was nervous about some of our, additions in the offseason. Like, I remember CJ got burned that game. I think it was by Jaden Reed.
Yes.
He was like doing somersaults on the field. It was bad. I thought he was washed after that. I remember being really excited about Zach Bond. I think he had like a sack in it. He went crazy in that game. I was super excited about Saquon. That touchdown throw from Hurts where he on the wheel route, that was great. Yeah, that was one of the best plays of the year. People kind of forgot about that, but that was an insane catch and throw. I guess the real turning point this year, would probably be the bye week. My roommate brings this up with me because he's a Giants fan, but it was week 4 after we got destroyed by the Bucs in Tampa. We were 2-2 going into the bye week. And that was the day after Alabama beat Georgia. So we were all obviously high on our horse in Tuscaloosa. And I remember telling my roommate, yeah, this is the least I've ever cared about the Eagles. So ever since then, they've kind of gotten me back into it. But I think that's the turning point I have this year. But I don't know. This team is talented. I expected us to be in a position like this, so I don't know.
You mentioned a turning point. What do you think turned?
Saquon Barkley. He went off. He went crazy in the beginning of the year. Don't get me wrong. He went off against the Packers, but that was when I really think we started to lead on him. I think our defense also grew a lot together. I think that Commanders game, the Monday night game, was a big turning point, because that was kind of their first little run when the Commanders were starting to be considered a little dangerous team that can knock other teams off. And that was a big win, kind of limiting him, albeit he was injured. I don't know. This team is just talented. Like I've said 1,000 times, it really feels like a fever dream just because they just got we've been here before. I don't know. We've been here before. They're just talented.
Yeah. I just think back, a lot of the Patriots regular seasons kind of flew by.
That's what I said after this, after the NFC
Championship. Not even close to the same thing. We'll talk something a little bit closer to that later. Although that team is really weird in their own way. We have a fun guest coming on for that. I'm sure you know who it is. But this Eagles team, would you say would you say this is a better team than it was 2 years ago? And would you say what do you think they're not quite as good at?
I think, man,
I've been thinking about
I don't know. It's tough because I feel like obviously I don't know, that 2022 team was obviously really special, but I do think there probably were more holes on the roster. I think our linebackers are better now, and I think our secondary is better now.
Yes.
We don't have Kelsey, but I think no one's gonna argue that our offensive line is worse.
No, not really.
I don't think it's gotten any worse.
Maybe a little pass pro, maybe a little.
Yeah. And Jalen Hurts, maybe he hasn't had as many wow games, as many wow moments as he did that season because he was in the MVP race and we really wasn't this year at all. But I don't think he's gotten worse. I just think he has more players to rely on. He doesn't need to do everything like he did then with he has Saquon. There's less weight on his shoulders. I don't know. It really just depends on the matchup. I don't know who I would take if those two teams played each other. But I will say I think this team is more suited to beat the Chiefs, considering we have that Super Bowl experience. We have more experience coaching and our roster is just more well-rounded.
Yeah, they've gotten a little younger, I would say.
Yeah, yeah, you're right.
They've drafted well.
They've gotten younger.
And some guys we had on that team too, Jordan Davis, he's improved since his rookie year. Obviously, we didn't have Nolan Smith or Jalen Carter, but they've gotten really good really quick. Nakobe Dean played in that Super Bowl, and even though he's not playing today, obviously, he was a shell of his former self this season. Like, yeah, like we've just gotten better. Like, I don't
you
know.
look at the fact that they also added 2 serious impact players in the first 2 rounds this year, Mitchell and DeJean, and they added Jalen Carter in the first round last year, and Old Smith. So the Eagles have drafted well to keep the talent level high on that football team, and I think there is definitely some of that. They keep drafting the guys that are high on Mel Kiper's big board. But they're high on Mel Kiper's.
Wow, they draft the guys everyone likes. How dare they?
Yeah, exactly.
How dare they do the stuff that people agree with?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nico, what do you think about this team versus the one 2 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think they're younger. I think the defense is just better. Like, no numbers are really going to tell you that this team is better.
Yeah.
Like, really, like that offense was insanely efficient. I think Hurts maybe had a bigger spark on tape. I just remember him being a little more dynamic as a runner, a little more of a playmaker at times. But and they obviously have Saquon now. But I think the biggest difference is 100% just the defensive personnel. Like, yes, they led the league in sacks, but their secondary plays for them. Like that, it just maybe the D line was like just as good. I don't know. I feel like they're a little better on paper. Maybe the coaching on offense has gone a little less. Like, I don't know. No numbers are going to prove to you this, but I do think they're better than last time.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's hard to go and like I don't really know how to go into nuance on this because like a lot of them are the same players and like you said the numbers like obviously AJ Brown was like outproducing what he did this year back then, but like I'm not gonna argue that he's a worse player than he was then. And like
no,
are we gonna get into the matchup next or should I just start now?
I mean, we could.
Like the reason I don't think like I think this team is better suited to beat the Chiefs is like the experience factor and like guys like Fangio and Sirianni, you know, having coached in Super Bowls before kind of bring that. Like the reason I said it was kind of a fever dream is because like, you know, the first 2 Super Bowls I saw the Eagles in my life, 2018 and 2023, like I was so excited. Like by media night on Monday, I was like amped up, like shaking. Now it's like Super Bowl Sunday and like we're just in the Super Bowl. Like it just feels like we're like, all right, like we're back. You got to win. Like that's what I think the biggest difference is. I don't think this team is playing with any added pressure. I just think they like playing with each other and it's a talented group and they want to keep it going and they want to win. Like this is not a team of destiny. This is just a team of really talented players.
Yes.
Yeah, the team of destiny was Washington and
yeah, like
I mean, I get what he's saying. Like it's always the team that comes out of nowhere or just has like a breakout year that they go into these Super Bowls and there's just a ton of pressure, but it just doesn't feel that way right now.
And then the other key with I forgot what I was going to say. And then the other thing about the Eagles is that when a team goes to the Super Bowl, I almost always say that this is their best shot to win the Super Bowl. Or when a team goes to the conference championship game, I always say that. I said it about Cincinnati. I said it obviously about the Rams. I was saying it. I've been saying it about a lot of teams. I think I said about Houston last year. The AFC is just so hard for anyone not named Mahomes to come out of at this point.
I mean,
and then you get to the Eagles, and I don't really feel like there was quite as much of this with the Eagles, although it definitely felt like it was there 2 years ago because there were some parts of that team that were aging.
It made sense. It made sense.
And they've just done a really good job of tying together loose ends on the roster and making everything work to get right back to where they were. And that's really commendable. It's really impressive. And then kind of just looking at the playoff run, you get Green Bay, you get LA, and you get Washington. It's certainly not the it's certainly not as challenging of a playoff run as had they had to have gone on the road to Detroit, because obviously the Lions were the number one seed. They were a tremendous team all year. It's not as dominant of a playoff run as the one 2 years ago, although I will say the 2022 Giants and then the year one Brock Purdy.
He got hurt in the first quarter.
Yeah, Brock Purdy got hurt. The year one Brock Purdy 49ers with Purdy getting hurt. It was a much more challenging playoff run this time around.
Yes.
And they still were very good in those games. Obviously, the Rams game was close, but
that was a weird one.
I mean, you go in and you play Washington and you just demolish the Commanders. I've seen a whole bunch of conference. I mean, I've been watching football for 15 years now. The Eagles have won 3 NFC Championship games in my time watching football. 38-7, 31-7, 55-23. Sklar, you have never had to stress through a conference championship game.
Oh, trust me, I was stressing last week or 2 weeks ago. Like I mean, like,
yeah, but you haven't had the you haven't had the Jaguars are up 10 in your house. Blake Bortles. You haven't had the Blake Bortles is beating us by 10 in our house. Are you kidding me? You haven't had that feeling.
I guess. I mean,
you haven't had the Joe Flacco is driving down the field and they're in field goal range feeling.
That Rams game had to be terrifying, though. Like when Kupp made that.
Oh yeah.
Puka, who made the big catch?
Puka.
Yeah, Puka. Oh man.
I thought it was. I thought it was over. I thought it was over.
You could be talking to Isaac right now.
I thought it was going to be a repeat of the Atlanta game or what was the other? Oh, the second Washington game. It was like I was seeing ghosts. I was seeing absolute ghosts in that moment. The lights were getting bright, and then I don't know, Jalen Carter, man. Like we just have guys everywhere that step up. So it's why you're in the game like this.
The Rams offensive line glitched on that last play.
Yeah, but I mean that's the one thing I'll say about Vic Fangio. Like I experienced this last year as a Dolphins fan. Like every final drive, teams move. Like every Vic Fangio final drive I see is like they get inside the 20 and then whatever happens from there happens. Like that's just the nature of how he likes to play in those situations. He just dials up a lot of prevent and just believes that once the space gets tight enough, they're going to pull through. And sometimes it fails them, but it does lead to some very stressful situations.
Yeah, I mean, Vic Fangio.
I remember the Titans game last year that just like ruined our season from there because we were just playing prevent against Levis and he actually pulled it off. But that's the only weird thing with Fangio. Like I wish you get a little more aggressive like Spags in those moments. That's the one criticism I have of him.
I already see the vision. I already see it happening tonight. Oh man.
I don't know.
I don't know if you can. I don't know if you can do that against Mahomes.
Yeah, I mean he's gonna find Kelsey even in the tightest space. Like that's just who he is. Yeah, I mean I don't know. I don't want to get on Fangio too much, but that is just something I've always noticed with him.
Sklar, just a couple more things going into this game. What do you think? The Eagles. All right. Let me phrase a sentence to you. If the Eagles blank, they will lose.
If we do what we did last time, we will lose. And last time we played the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. I think we played well enough to win, right? Like we scored 33 points. I don't even know the score of that game. I think I erased it out of my mind. Whatever you said. We scored that many points. We could have won the game, but we specifically lost that in all 3 phases at different moments, right? Like the Hurts fumble in the first half was a momentum killer. That could have been a big difference maker if we would have gone down on that drive, or even just punted the ball and given them worse field position instead of giving Nick Bolton a touchdown. Like any other outcome in that scenario could have been huge for us. So that was phase number 1. We let up the big Kadarius Toney punt return in the second half. That was the highlight of that guy's life and career. And
Hey, he had that one game against the Cowboys.
We gave it up. Yeah, he did. Yes, he did. That's true.
And everybody was in my mentions after that game.
Yeah.
I should spin the block.
We let that happen, and then they scored like 3 plays later. And then our defense just got absolutely shredded with the James Bradbury penalty, who, fun fact, is actually still on the Eagles' active 53-man roster.
I cannot believe
anything less.
Here, but he's still on the team.
I think he got – what happened was he got injured before the season, so he had surgery. So I think he's just, like, been existing in the locker room, taking up space. But yeah, we lost on that play. So even if they can cut out just one of those dumb mistakes again, they'll give themselves a way better chance at winning. Yeah. So just don't have bad, just uncharacteristic plays, right? Like against the Commanders in the second game, obviously Hurts was hurt, so like our offense was operating a bit different, but it was just uncharacteristic the amount of missed tackles they had. And you're playing Jaden Daniels, but that was uncharacteristic, and they lost. Those drops by Saquon and Smitty in those 2 losses we had, those are just uncharacteristic mistakes. So just, use your experience to your advantage and don't make those dumb mistakes in this game, and you won't lose.
Yeah, Squad, that's a key thing that I look at here with the Eagles, especially playing against Kansas City. That is one team that is like the one team in the NFL. Obviously, all the teams in the NFL are like this, but especially Kansas City. You can't give them anything because that's where Mahomes always capitalizes. I feel like every time a team makes a mistake, Patrick Mahomes will make them pay for that mistake.
It's turnover on downs.
Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah. And that's what I kind of think. That's why when, obviously there's been a lot of conversation about Jalen Hurts this season and his true impact on the Eagles winning. But that's what I think he does the best is he takes care of the football, right? Like, I'm sure you could put a lot of other quarterbacks in our system and, give them our roster and they could do they would be in this game too. But, not turning the ball over once in the playoffs is that's what I think his true value is as a quarterback. He protects the ball and gives us chances to win.
Yeah, I mean, these are 2 of the better ball control teams we've ever seen. Like that's their game. And the Eagles don't do the Chiefs achieves that more because of scheme, whereas the Eagles can kind of just create favorable looks all the time. And they can just run it. They can just get so much push in the run game in those short yardage situations. So but I would also say the Eagles are definitely more capable of hitting explosive plays than the Chiefs.
Mm-hmm.
So if I were Philadelphia, I honestly wouldn't try to out-ball control the Chiefs as much as I would try to burn them with a couple big plays to set them back. So I would take some shots. I think that's a key for the Eagles in this game, especially with the amount of man coverage that the Chiefs play compared to other teams that you face in a typical setting like this. I think the Eagles actually, we talk about how you can't make mistakes when it comes to Mahomes. But I do think that they need to try and hit some shots and get out to a lead because if you do anything else, the Chiefs special teams are going to come into play, the run game, you just cannot let the Chiefs play the way that they were able to play against Buffalo because Buffalo just never hit those big plays to get a big lead on them. So I think it will be very interesting to see if the Eagles stick to their ball control brand because I think it might be a higher variance game probably favors them.
2 seasons ago, the Eagles turned it over as a team 19 times. This year, 15 times. They had their plus 11 in turnover differential this year. The Bills were plus 24, which absurd. That's got to be up there for
I mean, Allen had a crazy season compared to how we usually think of him.
I mean, the Ravens were number 1 last year at plus 12. So that kind of just shows the type of variance that the Bills got this year. And they still couldn't make the Super Bowl. How pathetic. What a pathetic.
Hey, but the Josh Allen graphic is over.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Now he has a beard and an MVP.
Yeah, but we all know that we all that's the Joel Embiid MVP of the NFL. Like, sure, it's not okay. I'm sorry. You don't care enough. You don't care enough about the Sixers for that to affect you,
Dude. Come on, they've been bad enough this year. I don't need strays on Super Bowl Sunday. You know, the Sixers do actually play at 2 p.m. today, so.
I remember the Celtics played on Super Bowl Sunday one year when the Patriots were playing. It was like I think they were playing Portland, and they won on an Al Horford buzzer beater. Let me look this up.
And you guys, when was that? Was that 2019?
Let me see.
20.
Al Horford buzzer beater, Portland. Let's see.
That had to be 2019.
Well, I see Aaron Baines on the bench. So it's Feb 4, 2018.
Oh, you know, that was that. You know, actually, fun fact. That was when the Eagles beat the Patriots, obviously, but that was also my 13th birthday. So,
man, who hasn't been
Electric Factory?
That was such a great game, man. I mean,
yeah. To be fair, I mean, Jay Powell might be wrong about what he said about like how this is going to be a low scoring game because the Eagles just get in like boat races in the Super Bowl every time they play. So
that is true.
I don't know.
And, well, not Super Bowl 39.
Oh, okay.
Bragging about Super Bowls you weren't alive for. What?
I was alive.
Were you alive?
Yeah.
Oh, I guess
that was Feb 05. I'm November 04.
Bro, I think I was literally 2 days old when that game was played. All right, like
the game probably happened like I don't know what day. I honestly have no idea what day that game was.
I think it was February 6th.
But I know that the losing quarterback went to a terrific institution of higher learning.
Donovan McNabb. Syracuse.
All right, yeah, we're still waiting on our next guest to join. But we do have some final stuff to discuss with Sklar. I said if the Eagles blank, they will lose. If the Eagles blank, they will win.
I mean, if the Eagles just like, dude, I don't even know, man. Dude, like, I can say whatever that you want me to say, but thing is, like, we got to play Patrick Mahomes at the end of the day, I guess. Okay, if the Eagles force Mahomes to hold the ball and don't let him throw it on his first read every time, we will win.
Every time? So if he throws it off of his second read one time, the Eagles will win?
No, okay. Let me cook. So some stat research. Everyone's heard that Vic Fangio is 0-8 versus Mahomes. Obviously, I know Nico has experienced some of those games, and some of those other games were on the Broncos. The one trend in those games is that Mahomes gets the ball out at ridiculous speeds, right? I have the notes right here. It was week 7 of 2019. Mahomes was getting it out in 2.39 seconds, and then in week 2019 against Denver, week 15, actually, he was getting it out in 3.3. So that was the highest and lowest. So he was getting it out in under 3.3 seconds in every game he's played Fangio. And now in the 3 playoff losses, the fastest he's gotten the ball out was against the Bengals in 3.47 seconds. So there's a trend. If you make Mahomes hold the ball for longer than usual, it's tough. One thing for Fangio that bodes well with this stat is that he has better personnel than he's probably ever had on the Dolphins. Sorry about that, Nico.
No, it's true. It's true.
We have the number 1 defense in the league, so it's not going to be like easy for him to hit his first read every time, but make him hold the ball and hopefully they can win.
Yeah, I mean that's what Mahomes is going to try to do against a too high defense. Like that's what they do. Like they run RPOs, all that stuff. Like if you can disrupt those, like that's your best bet.
All right, Sklar, before you go, I need a prediction on the record.
Score.
I don't know. Scoring all. I think we're gonna win 41-33.
Cool.
Okay.
Man,
okay. I deserve that.
Sign me up for that.
I deserved that.
Oh man,
I deserved that for bringing up Super Bowl 39 and but and then what is the what does the celebration look like on Broad Street?
Oh, I wish I was there right now. I'll be at the local Philadelphia bar in Tuscaloosa. Actually, we got a little watch party set up with probably 30 or 40 Eagles fans. I'd say it's pretty good numbers for Alabama.
That is so
what I'm looking for in this game though is an Alabama player to score for the first time ever in Super Bowl history. I want a Devontae Smith touchdown catch.
I think it's very possible. Very, very possible.
Yeah. So Devontae Smith, Super Bowl MVP. Let's go.
Okay.
Let's go.
Tyler Steen trick play.
Okay, Sklar. Thank you so much for coming on. And I mean, you have to say it before you go.
Go Birds.
There you go. All right. Thank you
Go
so
Birds.
much for coming on.
See you, man.
All right. Now let's have some fun and talk about the reigning, defending, 2-time world champions of the National Football League with Pranav, the Kansas City Chiefs.
How's it
The
going?
hashtag Chiefs.
The hashtag Chiefs.
Feels like
this is a yearly thing for you. You're on every year.
Yeah. Feeling good about another year. It feels like I don't know how to describe it. Like it feels almost like as consistent as Christmas or my birthday at this point. Hopping on here every morning before the Super Bowl. Like I like consistency. Like Shay said, my whole life. So yeah, this is consistent.
Oh my god.
Okay, we've got a Shay name drop within the first 10 seconds. I know this is going to go pretty well. Speaking of which,
knocking off all the props.
Speaking of which, he's on an unreal tear right now.
Yeah.
Like, he's basically turned into the greatest player ever. Not that he wasn't already almost there, but
he never loses.
Patrick Mahomes, the Kansas City Chiefs, Travis Kelce, Andy Reid, Steve Spagnuolo, and everything else that comes into this. Brett Veach, Clark Hunt, and raising the Lamar Hunt Trophy, and going for lifting the Vince Lombardi Trophy, which should be soon renamed the Tom Brady Trophy in the Brady Bowl. Yeah, we need to protect the legacy at this point. It's getting tough.
I'm not calling you.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So the Chiefs are obviously have been here before.
Mm-hmm.
This team felt a little different, but also the exact same. How would you describe that, Pranav?
Yeah, if like you said, it's like it had a lot of similarities to like last year as far as roster construction goes, but there was like a sense of security or like a sense of trust that you had all year with this team compared to the one last year. Like last year had a better defense. They had both a better version of Travis Kelce and Rashee Rice, so you could say they were more talented on offense too, especially with the tackle position with Donovan Smith being there a little bit more secure than it has been this year. But at the same time, you saw the hurdles that this team went through. Everyone thought it was a big surprise that they even made it to the Super Bowl. It was one of the more improbable runs statistically ever. But with this team, I mean, they went 15-1 basically for a reason. I mean, their ball control style of play that they really tried to adapt towards the end of last season, combined with a regressed defense, but still a really talented defense, kind of just kept the screws on things, like kept the lid closed. And as long as the score was relatively close, you give Pat a chance at the end of the game, you know he's most likely going to come through. And so there was just a sense of trust and security with this year's team, even if they were like a little bit worse or they weren't like the best performing as far as like analytics goes, that there was kind of felt all year, just like off the coaching staff, off the quarterback strength, off the strength of superstars. And I think that's kind of like the big difference compared to all the other teams. Like there was really no errors made throughout the whole year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just the one thing that when I was talking about the Chiefs this week or last week that I kind of pointed to was it's been basically since 2021 that they've been blown out in a game. It feels like, obviously, not counting the end of the season game this year. It's so consistent. They go out there every week. They're going to give you a game. I mean, that's what great teams do. They give you a game. They do more than just give you a game, and they're going to put themselves in position to win. You've watched this for a long time now, and having come to expect it, like, what does that say about this team, this organization?
Well, it says I'm blessed. It says I'm blessed for sure. But what it says about this team and organization is like from top down, there's like a unity as far as like the vision for what they want to do, not just from like, like the cliche standpoint, like culture and whatnot, but like the type of players they acquire, both in like free agency, both in the draft. Like there's a very clear mindset of what they want to do. Like all their tight ends, like it's kind of like a Pokemon evolution of like the little Charizard, like to like extreme. Like I don't know Pokemon that well, but like they all like fulfill similar roles. Like you have like
Charizard is called
Charizard. Okay, but like they all have like similar roles within the offense and like similar like blocking assignments, but like in like similar receiving roles. But it goes from like the baby role all the way to like Kelsey. And they like emphasize speed in the offseason. Like they doubled down on not just Brown, but they also got Worthy in the draft, and it paid off because Brown got injured immediately, like not even before the season started. And without Worthy, they probably don't get to this point, given what happened to Rasheed. And so just like emphasizing certain body types, certain like types of players in the draft, certain DBs that they want. They got Jaden. They didn't really have a need for safety in the 4th round, but they went ahead and took Jaden Hicks anyway, just to emphasize the position. And he's played the biggest role imaginable. Like he's been better than Brian Cook. He's filled in that second role right next to Justin Reed. And I think like just emphasizing certain types of players that you want in the draft goes along with that unity, like I said earlier, of what the organization's vision is for what for the players that they want.
Pranav, this is the lowest point differential that the Chiefs have had in the Andy Reid era, not just in the Mahomes era, in the Andy Reid era. That includes all of those Alex Smith teams.
Right, yeah.
Not that Alex Smith was a bad quarterback and makes it sound like we're trashing him. And I feel like he does kind of he doesn't really get enough credit because it's simply what Mahomes did when he took over. But this is the lowest point differential for the Kansas City Chiefs since the head coach was Romeo Crennel, Patriots legend Romeo Crennel. I think that was the year that the Chiefs didn't have a single receiving touchdown by a wide receiver.
I think it was 2013. I think
Reid's first year would have been that. They made the playoffs doing that. Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, but this team, 15-2, really 15-1.
Yeah.
But 15-2, we'll go for it because I don't know how to do this stat without this game. 10.2 and 6.8 was the expected win-loss.
Yeah.
Just remarkable ability to win close games. A lot of people attribute that to officiating.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you a chance to A, push back on that for a second, and B, just kind of what goes into the ability to win all these close games for the Chiefs.
Yeah, so for starters, about point differential, it's a little bit skewed because the Broncos beat us 38-0 on the final week when like we basically threw out Carson Wentz and a bunch of like
Johnson.
We threw out like Najee Johnson, Carson Wentz, Sam Fetterman, all friends.
Okay.
And so I'd say like in reality they were closer to like 100 or like a sub.
Olajuwon got a run in that game.
What did you say?
Chris Olajuwon got a
He did. Yeah, he came in.
Legend.
But yeah, no. So like we were kind of closer to like 100 or like slightly sub 100 team as far as differential goes. But like it's still pretty like low compared to the rest of the contenders that you saw in the league this year. But I think that's more just a testament to the style of play the Chiefs had. Like the 1-score games, like sure there were a bunch of close 1-score games that you could say that they got lucky in, but there were also kind of like some fake ones. Like there was a game where they were up 14 points on the Raiders with like a minute left, and then the Raiders scored a garbage time touchdown. That's a 1-score game, but that's like not really what it was throughout the entirety of the game, and just stuff like that, like their play style, like with the minimized drives that they have, they can't put up a bunch of points. I know the over 30 points, like their first game scoring over 30 was last week, and that was a big emphasis throughout the year. And then like just the amount of one score games, it just like they play so few drives and they limit how many drives the other team has as well. And so when you play like that, you're going to have the margins between the teams a lot closer than it typically is, even if the game is like the differential is wider when you're actually watching. And you also leave yourself susceptible to not scoring as many points as you probably like to, which is okay. Whatever way it takes to win, you get it done. As far as the officiating, I don't know. I don't know really what to say. It's just a bunch of BS. Like the fans are gonna get mad when there is a team that's constantly at the top. Like if you look at like statistics for refereeing, which I don't really care to, but like if you want to take a look, the Chiefs aren't even in like the upper percentile for calls made in their favor. And I know like people just watch like the calls that are made in high leverage moments, but it's typically the Chiefs that are playing in high leverage moments compared to all these other teams.
On
And
national
so it just the bias, and I get it. Like I completely understand you guys. Like people don't like watching the Chiefs win, but at the same time, like let's be a little bit rational about things. Yeah, just a little bit.
Chiefs this, and you kind of mentioned it with the amount of drives that the Chiefs play.
Yeah.
If you go back to Patrick Mahomes' first season with the Kansas City Chiefs as a starting quarterback, the Chiefs ranked 14th in time per drive, 2 minutes 44 seconds, and they were number one in points per drive. That was one of the greatest offenses I've ever seen. And I will still say about that offense until the day that I die, no offense in NFL history was better at just they could score from wherever, whenever, however they wanted. As the first year, 2, maybe 3 of Patrick Mahomes on the Kansas City Chiefs, they also scored on 52.6% of their drives that year. I'm just all pulling this from Pro Football Reference right now. This year, the longest drives in the league, 3 minutes and 8 seconds, 10th in points per drive versus 15th in points per game. And they've scored on 43% of drives, so a significantly lower percentage of scoring drives, but still top 10 in the league, playing the fewest drives because their drives are the longest. It's kind of like a basketball team that slows the game down. It's kind of like, I don't want to say it's Tony Bennett, Virginia, because it's a lot more watchable than that. But also the Tony Bennett, Virginia teams, but I think in football it works differently than in basketball, because in football in basketball that would kind of leave you to get nicked over at the end by a team with a little less talent. This for in football, it kind of pushes, it gives you a chance at the end of the game when you're going to be the more talented team.
Yeah, no, you said it perfectly there at the end. When you're the more talented team, which the Chiefs really aren't always the more talented team, but they usually have like the best collection of like high end talent. And so like when you keep the margins close enough, you probably expect, like the organization and like the coaching staff expect, that the high leverage talent or like the high level talent could come through. Like whether it's Chris Jones on a crucial third down stop, or it's like Mahomes and Kelsey in a fourth quarter 2-minute drill. Like you said, the talent level can usually exceed any of the other deficiencies. And the margins between the two teams, like the Eagles this game, like they're going to be the more talented roster.
Better football team.
But you're going to see that it's going to be a relatively close game, and it's because of that reason.
Yeah, the Eagles are the better football team, but there's a reason why a lot of people are picking Kansas City. Kansas City did not turn the ball over the last Let me see this.
Oh, they did last week. They did last week.
Yeah, but they did last week.
Been since November.
Yeah, it had been. They have not turned it over against a non-Buffalo Bills team since November 4th. That is the day that the college basketball season started.
Yeah.
So I have not missed a Chiefs turnover in a non-Bills game since.
Yeah.
And still no interception since the regular season Bills game.
Yeah, no. And one of those was kind of fake too. It's like on a 4th and 13.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it just speaks to kind of like what I said earlier, like keeping a lid on things. Like Mahomes kind of got like screwed with really bad turnover luck towards like the beginning of the year. Like whether it was like drops off receivers' hands, whether it was batted balls at the line of scrimmage or like Worthy running a wrong route. But those things happen throughout the early part of a regular season when you're trying to develop a team. But like ever since like that midway point of the year, they've really tightened up. Like it's just a mistake-free offense. And like even like with the turnover last week, it was like a botched handoff. Like there was not like I wouldn't say it wasn't a mistake because it was. But it's kind of something that like was more unfortunate than like bad decision making on the part of the players on the field. And so that's been really encouraging to see. Like when you're running this style of offense, when your possessions are already limited as they are, and you're having long drives down the field, you can't have any error. And they've really emphasized that. And I think it's been huge for even like making this run, because they were like undefeated at one point, but like it clearly wasn't as good of a team that we're seeing right now.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, football versus basketball in terms of longer and fewer possessions. It's that in football, possessions have more inflection points, more question points, more things that can happen on them than they would in basketball. Obviously, a lot of different things can happen on a basketball possession, but those possessions are at the longest 30 seconds, or unless you get an offensive rebound, and then it could be 50 and then minute 10, whatever. I've seen crazy things happen. But in football, every play, you have to come up with a new way to, or sometimes you don't have to come up with a new way, but you have to find a way to not make a mistake. And there's 11 guys on the field that have to not make a mistake. And the fact that the Chiefs are able to do that this way has been really, really impressive for so long. But then kind of on the topic of the Super Bowl itself, or first the playoff run before we kind of get into the Super Bowl. You play against Houston, hold them to 14. They just come off of a game where they got basically their way with the Chargers. Then they come into Arrowhead, and the Chiefs go ahead. They're leading at half. They go ahead by 8 after Travis Kelce touchdown. They go ahead by 11, and they kind of just pulled away. It kind of felt like a Chiefs game.
Yeah. As far as the Texans game goes, like a lot of people, like the analytics say we should have lost or something. I've seen that float around from certain accounts. But it wasn't even that great of a game from the Chiefs. Like it was probably their worst game in like a couple months. And like the people making like a big deal about whether the bye week, like the 2 bye weeks would get to them. Like maybe they had a point, but plot armor prevails, and they came through. I think the biggest thing about that game, because the offense wasn't that efficient, the defense was good at getting home to Stroud, like with the 8 sacks, but they weren't particularly like great in coverage. Outside of Trent McDuffie, like the Texans were still not in coverage; they were fine in coverage. But like in run support, that was like the game that were like really raised some alarms about, hey, when you're facing like Josh Allen, James Cook, or Saquon and Jalen Hurts, how are you going to tighten up? Because they allowed Joe Mixon and even Stroud to gash them a lot on the ground, which was an alarming sight. And so that, coupled with just how bad the offense was playing, definitely raised some questions. But on the same side, you'd have to think about it from the fact that, that's the best pass rush they're going to see in the playoffs. Maybe Philly's a little bit better, but like an edge duo of Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter against those tackles, like it was always going to be a mismatch. I think the glaring difference between special teams is what you also saw in that game too. Like, I think like I noticed it during that game, but like special teams were so like such an emphasis in the playoffs. Like Nico Remigio had a 70-yard return to start off the game. The Chiefs had a couple blocked kicks. Fairbairn just missed like wide left or wide right, and Butker didn't miss at all. And so like the margins get even smaller. And so although the Texans had every opportunity to kind of seize that game, with the way the Chiefs offense was playing, with the way their run game was going, the special teams margins add up. And so that's kind of how I saw that game. It's kind of like one of the Chiefs games of like earlier in the season. But against Buffalo, I mean, they were a buzzsaw. Like they couldn't be stopped on offense whatsoever. Like even on that play where they turned the ball over, they were well within the red zone. Like they were going to score another touchdown. And they just happened to fumble. But I think they only punted once, to my memory, in that game, and they were able to either score a touchdown or come away with a field goal on all of their drives. And like I said earlier, the Chiefs' drives are already minimized. So whenever like you allow them to put up like 30 or over 30, it's basically like a 40 to 50 point game for anyone else. Like that's how efficient they were on offense that day. The Bills got a bit lucky with their turnover luck in that game. Like as they have been all season, like they had the highest turnover margin by far. Like Allen had like the same amount of turnover worthy plays that he typically has, but like none of them were caught. And he had 2 dropped interceptions in that game, along with like,
oh my God, yeah,
5. Like
it was 3 on the first drive.
Like, yeah, and like 4 fumbles recovered by the Bills, and we fumbled, and they also recovered it. So they recovered all the fumbles in the game, and they still lost. The defense was getting carved by the Chiefs' offense, and then their offense. I wouldn't even say our defense played particularly bad. Their offense just had a lot more opportunities to get the ball down the field. But yeah, no, definitely like something that was kind of like eyebrow raising was how minimally they used James Cook in that game. But that leads me to wonder whether it was like actually just like the game script, because they were running the ball hard. Like they ran like the same short yardage play like every time. They had design runs for Josh. So that makes me wonder if Spags threw something out there that they just didn't like to run on or something. Something like that, which we could possibly see against Philly. But yeah, no, that game was like kind of like your Chiefs of old game where their offense just carved up, and they got here. Yeah.
Steve Spagnuolo, the legacy of this guy. He has already won 4 Super Bowls as a defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
He's going for 5. I mean, this is somebody that is arguably, if not already, the greatest straight up coordinator, legacy wise, in the history of the sport. And we'll kind of get into that in a minute. But this matchup with the Eagles.
Yeah.
2 years ago, Spags' defense did not perform as well as it usually does in these types of games, because that was a terrific Eagles offense. It's another terrific Eagles offense, but a different terrific Eagles offense.
Yeah.
What do you think Spags will have dialed up for this game?
I think he's 100% going to have more success than he did 2 years ago. Just like off the fact that like that performance was like one of the highest scoring Super Bowls ever. I think the second highest, or for something like that.
73 combined points. There were 74 in.
Yeah, so second highest. Yeah.
I'm trying to think. I think that's correct.
Yeah, so I think definitely he's going to see his unit have more success in this game. But I think like this matchup goes more favorably for like the style of defense that he runs, not just off like a talent perspective, but Hurts has been drastically worse against the blitz, and Spags loves to blitz. And like, name the last time like a Chiefs team really got diced up by a running back, like an elite running back, like elite, like Saquon's elite, and he's probably going to get his, but it doesn't really happen as much.
I mean, we saw the Ravens game.
Yeah, like every single, like the last 5 Derrick Henry matchups, it's like, oh, just Derrick Henry was so quiet. Like you saw it in the AFC Championship game, you saw it in Week 1, saw it in a couple of other Titans games. Christian McCaffrey last year, He didn't have like the biggest game ever. He actually fumbled, but yeah, like it doesn't really happen with Spags' defense that they allow a big running back to gash them. Obviously, there's a first time for everything, so Saquon very well could. But like that generally doesn't happen. So I feel like he, with 2 weeks to prepare in a healthier defense, he'll have something to account for that. And I think that he really could make Jalen Hurts struggle tonight. I think it's going to be a low scoring game. And I think that he can get home a lot more frequently. I don't think they had a single sack outside of like the fumble recovery last game. And I think that with like dialed up pressures, like McDuffie coming off the edge, because now McDuffie's in, like, he can play nickel with Watson back. I mean, there's just so much more options that he can run, and I think that is going to be successful, relatively speaking.
Nico?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it with Sklar that, like, I think Pranav makes a good point about how this game could be lower scoring just because we're watching the two best ball control teams in the sport. And I am really interested with Spags because of the high success rate that the Chiefs' run defense has given up in these playoffs, but also like they have the inherent schematic advantage of having extra guys in the box a lot of the time, and they're going to play a little more man coverage, which I guess. So I think it'll be interesting to see if the Eagles try to hit some shots like down the sideline, like AJ Brown, Devontae Smith. Like, how much are they going to lean on Saquon just because inherently, like, they're better suited to run the ball against this Chiefs defense when you factor in how Hurts has struggled against some of the stuff. If you give Spags the chance, like, I think that's just leaving you a little more vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
So I am really interested to see just how much they care about those matchups on the outside compared to just sticking to what they do well and what's been so sustainable for them and so low variance for them. Like, it's just been so consistent.
Now, and then on the other side of the ball, the Kansas City Chiefs offense against this Eagles defense. The Chiefs offense has kind of just felt like a constant. It doesn't. Yeah. It feels it's so consistent. We mentioned just the long drives, even if they don't end in touchdowns or points in general. The long drives can take the air out of a defense, and it allows them to go late in the game, move down the field, and win those ball games.
Yeah.
What do you think this Chiefs offense is going to look like today? I feel like that's like asking, will the sun rise?
Yeah. I mean, like you said, it's consistent, so I'm gonna expect more of the same. I think they're gonna perform like relatively well, like decently. I wouldn't say it's gonna be like their best offensive game of the year or anything like that. Maybe it could be, but I think they're going to perform relatively well. Like, they're going to have a couple of successful drives. They're going to have like some 3 and outs. It's just like the nature of how things go against a defense as talented. I think like Nico said it in his TikTok, like Vic Fangio, like really his scheme is like one of the driving factors as to why this Chiefs offense has become what it is, more boring, more ball controlled like style. And he's like a very zone heavy defensive coordinator, and I think that bodes well for guys like Travis Kelce, guys like Xavier Worthy. I was watching a podcast, I think it was Kyle Hamilton and Amon-Ra St. Brown earlier this week, and they're like, the best way to beat the Chiefs is just like, especially on defense, is just to like man up and just hope that they don't get beat on their man-to-man coverages. And the Eagles like are a zone heavy team, like I mentioned before. So there are some things that can play into the Chiefs' hand, as well as like Oren Burks being out there instead of Nakobe Dean. They picked on him all last year when Dre Greenlaw got hurt. So that's an advantage that they've used to their that's something they've used to their advantage in the past, and it could very well rear its ugly head again tonight. And so yeah, I'm interested to see how fast they start. I think that's an emphasis, because all of these games where they've like really played well on offense, they have fast starts, like the one they had in Buffalo. And like they had a relatively fast start against the Texans, but they had a terrible drive after that return by Remigio. So we'll see. I think a fast start is important for them. No, you can't do the trail by 10 gimmick that they've run every single Super Bowl they've won. No, like They could.
You
They
have gimmicks
could,
and Super Bowls that
but-
you win. Just
I'm
kind of
just saying, like,
gets to where we are at with this.
with the offense that they're running, it just doesn't bode well if you get
Yes,
yourself in a
yes,
hole.
yes.
Yeah, like you could have done that with the Tyreek Hill offense. You could have done that with the 2022 offense. You could have done that when Rashid Rice is here, but you can't do it this year. So I think getting a fast start, getting a lead at least at some point in the game, is going to be crucial. Like not just like winning the game. That sounds stupid, but like an early lead is going to be helpful for this offense if they really want to win this one.
All right, Pranav, you kind of already hit it, but like obviously if the Chiefs blank, they will lose. If the Chiefs go behind by 10, they will lose. That's kind of what you were getting at. And if the Chiefs blank, they will win.
You like? Are you asking for a prediction, like score prediction?
No. If the Chiefs do this, they like. I asked him.
Yeah. Okay. If the Chiefs win the turnover battle, if the Chiefs sack Jalen Hurts at least 3 to 4 times, and if the Chiefs tackles hold up in protection and minimize the amount of sacks, along with Patrick, if they both minimize the amount of sacks Mahomes takes and make less mistakes as they have been all season, they'll win the game.
All right, I'm gonna bring on one more guy. That unannounced guest, Josh Berman is coming.
What's up?
Because we have to talk before we even get to the predictions part. We have to talk about the legacy aspect of this game.
Oh yeah.
And what better person to do that with than the guy that just talks NFL history all the time?
I've got an off-season project that I'm debating on doing.
Okay, then you can't share it if you haven't decided that you're going to do it yet.
I think I'm going to. It's just more. I want to. It's more of whether or not I actually can.
What would you say, Josh, is on the line for the Chiefs in this game from a historical perspective? Just obviously the ability to be the first team to win 3 straight Super Bowls.
You join New England. There's no like, oh man, they're getting close. No, you're officially at that conversation, if not ahead of them, according to some people, if they win today. What's interesting is for Philly, they have so much more to lose than the Chiefs do. If the Chiefs lose, all right, great. You've won 3. You've made it to every single Super Bowl except for 2 in a 7-year span. Fine. If the Eagles lose, this is the second time in 3 years they've made it here, and they've lost to the same team both times. And that's after getting Saquon Barkley, after doing everything. Like, there's so much the Eagles have to lose. The Chiefs probably have more. The Chiefs have more to gain, though. The Chiefs can become, I mean, Mahomes joins not just Brady, he joins Jordan in those 3-peat. Like, it's incredible what they've done.
And he's
it's interesting.
30? He's 29? 29 years old. And Pranav, I'll kind of let you piggyback off of that a little bit if you want to. Just what this would mean as a Chiefs fan to win 3 in a row, to be the first team to do this, to join the New England Patriots as the greatest dynasties in the 21st century of American sports.
Yeah, and not just the 21st century, as far as like the NFL goes, it's going to be like right there. Yeah. I mean, no team has ever like 3-peated in the Super Bowl era, and like I don't really care to talk about the pre-Super Bowl, like the pre-merger, as much.
Packers missed it by 1 year.
Yeah.
The trophy's named after him, so they get it anyway.
I guess, but like even from that standpoint, like what it means, I mean, I don't know if I can further emphasize it than what Josh and you have emphasized it on. Like, it's the first time, like in our lifetime, it's the first time, like in the Super Bowl era that it's ever happened, and it kind of makes them like an trash talkable team. Like, what can you even say? Like after this, like they can
they'll find something.
They'll
find something. But like realistically, they can win this one. They could take like 2 years off. Mahomes can go golf or something, and like
play minor league baseball.
Like
right.
Like their legacies are already cemented, but like this just like elevates them into like kind of like a pedestal on their own. Like they still have like a little bit more to do to catch New England, to catch Brady. But as far as like this accomplishment, it's definitely like it has like an extra element of like you need it because like no one else has done it, and like it kind of puts you in a pedestal by yourself, and that's how important it is for this team, this player, like this run that they're on. Like it's pretty important. Like this one you could definitely feel like it's the most important game they've played, and you could say that every year, but like let's say they took a year off and then won it again, it wouldn't be as important as this one is. Yeah.
This is the first. This would be the first thing that they did that New England can't say that they did. Everything else that they've done so far, the Patriots did too. This is the first thing that New England never did.
Yeah.
I mean, the one thing I would say that they already kind of have on, well, I don't know if this is fair totally, but when you think about like the Arrowhead Invitational and the fact that ever since Mahomes has been the starter, they've never missed the AFC Championship.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the Patriots had like a lot of struggles in between some
Patriots
of their
missed the playoffs in
They
Brady's
missed the playoffs. They could, yeah. Like
they also led the league in touchdowns that year.
I mean, I think in terms of consistency, like they're right there. Like, and who knows from here, like if they just keep making AFC title games and being right there. So I mean,
it is
Nico, if you make the AFC Championship game, how happy are you? Like they're doing this every year.
I mean, I can't even say.
I'm more spoiled than you, but I'm the only one here that hasn't lived through a dynasty with their team. Where it's like, man, these two, like they don't know how lucky they've had it.
And you can have the Astros.
I watched them suck the last 2 years. I understand how lucky I was to watch Tom Brady and the New England Patriots for all those years. But it is, as you said, Josh, the one thing the Patriots never did was win 3 in a row. It came really close when they, it was technically to get to 2 in a row at the time, but they won the next year. They came really close in 2017 in that Eagles game. If you remember, everything all the Eagles fans were talking about after that game, they ended the dynasty. Nick Foles ended the dynasty.
Every Patriots playoff loss was they're ending the dynasty. And I can guarantee you that if the Eagles win today, the Chiefs dynasty is over. Those are the conversations. Is this it for Patrick Mahomes?
Yeah.
How concerned are we about
Buffalo fans were saying that 2 weeks ago. Like, they're like, let's go end the dynasty. I'm like, okay.
Buffalo didn't beat us very often over those 20 years.
So
they think that.
I think going back to what Sam said, like about the Patriots, like having like a window to go for 3, like it also plays into like how like lucky you have to be from a health standpoint. I know Gronk was injured one of those years.
Edelman missed the entire 2017 season.
Yeah, and I think like that's a big emphasis as to why the Chiefs have been successful. Like obviously there's some element of luck, but they also have like a great like training staff and like a health staff, and so I think like that really goes into it. Like you have to be healthy, and like they have been, fortunately, and they are pretty relatively healthy going into this game, outside of Rice, obviously. But that's a big emphasis as to maybe why the Patriots didn't get to that mountain point, and the Chiefs might get to that mountaintop tonight.
And thinking, what is the biggest injury the Chiefs have had in this run? Is it Rashee Rice this year the biggest injury?
Rice.
It probably is.
Rice, the season ender, Rice. I know
you're right.
Mahomes' kneecap is up there, but he came back.
But he only missed a couple. I'm talking like a season
ender. Season ender, it's Rashee. Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah.
And you look at the other thing about this game that we
Mitchell Schwartz. I'd say Mitchell Schwartz, Kelechi Osemele, and Fisher popping his Achilles in garbage time with the AFC Championship. Yeah,
that's probably one that was big.
Yeah,
and they did lose the next week or 2 weeks later.
And then you get to the Andy Reid angle of this. I mean, he's the all-time wins leader for both of these teams as the head coach.
Yeah.
He is looking for yet another ring. He obviously had a Super Bowl ring as a coordinator for Mike Holmgren and the Packers before he got the job in in Philadelphia, was terrific there, but never won the ring. Now he's going for his 4th as a head coach.
Yeah.
His legacy as one of the greatest coaches in the history of the sport.
Yeah. I mean, he's probably already the 2nd greatest coach of all time.
We got
And
Downey
think
here.
I think that just further adds to it. I mean, it's a weird contrast with what we've seen throughout Andy Reid's like career. Like early on, and like for most of his career, he was like the innovative offensive mind that really wasn't great at like the game management style. Like it's like I've seen it like before. Like they were like Andy Reid can't read a clock. Like the game management aspect of the game, like he really screwed up on multiple playoff runs. Like we've seen that even in his like Chiefs tenure. But this year, like he's really been a better coach than he has been a play caller. Like honestly, like the playbook wasn't that diverse throughout this season. It was really they're just running like the same concepts over and over. Like a lot of people thought it was stale, and it kind of was stale. But the way they've been like draining out the clock, like been like relatively successful at using their timeouts in like the perfect circumstance, and just like giving their team the advantage as far as like the game management aspect goes, where like Patrick has the ball last to finish the game. I think that's really been something they've succeeded on, and it really has to do with Andy's transformation as a head coach.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, go. You had something more interesting than I was going to say.
The thing was, Andy Reid used to be known as a playoff choker until he got his first ring. Andy Reid, no, it wasn't like, he was known as a guy that chokes in the playoffs every year. That was his thing.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, as you were talking, I made the connection. You know who now is being talked about the exact same way Andy Reid was talked about for 15 years?
Kyle Shanahan.
Kyle Shanahan. Where it's like,
no, we're talking about the Julio catch last night. Like, topic and
and they called a not like I remember the fumble Matt Ryan had where they had Devontae Freeman out in pass protection instead of Kevin Coleman. He was on like 3rd and 1 and just like stuff like that. Like and like Andy like has choked like in his Chiefs tenure, like the Colts game, the Steelers game, the first Bengals AFC Championship game. Like he's had his like very low lows with the Chiefs, but I think like this year especially, it's really where he's leveled up as a game manager compared to as a play caller. Yeah,
he's got Spags too.
Mm-hmm.
The key go.
Oh, I was gonna say I hate to divert from the legacy talk a little bit, but we were talking about Pranav was talking about kind of like the play calling criticisms, and it all just really makes me wonder, like he got through the entire regular season, most of it without pulling out too much new or unique stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited.
Meaning he has everything he could possibly want tonight.
He showed a little. He's.
Well, no, he's got to save it for the next Super Bowl.
He went into the bag a bit to close out the Bills game. Like obviously that throw to Ryan, like that was clearly something he had saved. But I can't help but just be excited to see what he pulls out.
Yeah, no, Nico, you mentioned it. I think Greg Rousseau said on his film study, like Andy pulled out plays that he's never seen like before. Like they didn't even game plan for it. Because it was never shown on tape. Like I remember like the last Mahomes QB run before the 4th and 1 play in the Super Bowl last year, like the designed run was in 2019 where that kneecap injury happened. From then on, he went at least
they don't do sneaks.
4 to 5 years without running a single quarterback design run. And then on that 4th and 1 play, Nick Bosa crashed the edge too hard, and then he just ran around. And then last like 2 weeks ago, he had 2 designed runs for Patrick in the end zone where he scored, where like he had like a motion and then Patrick just rolled out like he was going to pass and then he just took it. And so maybe like I think we could see a pass out of that design today. Probably. Like just something that we haven't seen before because he's been saving it the whole year.
I mean, like a lot. We've always talked about how like Jet Chip Wasp and like Corn Dog. Like I can't help but be excited to wonder if there's some legendary.
There's definitely going to be something.
I'll never forget when he pulled out that play from the Rose Bowl that was 100 years old in 54.
Yeah.
Against the Niners.
Yeah.
Where it was like, people were like, no one's ever seen this play before. And then eventually comes up, no, actually, in like the 1912 Rose Bowl,
was like-
someone did
There's
it.
probably
And
an
Andy Reid was like, yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
where I got it from.
I think it was like a trap play, and
Yeah.
he did something. He did something like that against Buffalo as well. It wasn't successful, but he ran like a play from like the 1967 Chiefs, where it was like a shuttle to Pacheco, where with like two tight ends like moving in the formation. Yeah, it was
Like a
pretty good.
wildcat inside your own 10 incoming.
Yeah,
All right.
The other thing about Mahomes, too, about runs, I just checked this. So in the regular season, he averages 3.86 carries a game in the regular season.
Mhm.
In the playoffs, he averages 5.4.
Mhm.
I mean, that's a huge jump.
And the yardage is significantly more.
Yeah, the yardage, too.
On like an efficiency standpoint, and like
Yeah.
it's weird that like defenses like get startled by it and they don't really like. It's a big gain almost every time. Like
29.1 in the
I wonder-
playoffs and to 20.
I wonder if he's going to pull out the play call that Richard Nixon wanted Shula to run.
I actually don't know that story.
I do not.
You don't know that Richard Nixon called Don Shula before the Super Bowl and
Which
gave him a
one?
play? The one I think when they were undefeated.
Really? I did. That's a story. You got me on that one.
I think I learned that when I was like 11.
Wow. Okay. Just flex on us.
Okay.
That's interesting. That's a random one.
All right. The last thing of this show,
Yeah.
our Super Bowl predictions. And Josh, this was an interesting thing you talked through with me a couple weeks ago when the matchup came out. It was
It's a new way of kind of thinking.
it's the Matrix.
Yeah.
So Josh, if you wouldn't mind, do the honors.
So myself and Michael, we do weekly picks every single week. And obviously every single week, there's one or two games you're going to be torn on. And this game I was kind of torn on. So I had this realization of thinking about the game like this. And honestly, this game, it isn't necessarily going to be very helpful because it wound up being 3-2. And I feel like if you're torn on a game and you go through the scenario and it's 5-0 or 4-1, you kind of have your pick. When it's 3-2, it's a little bit, which for me it was. But let's go through it one by one. You have to give an answer every single time.
I honestly forgot what I said on these.
Yeah. Low scoring defensive slugfest. Who wins that game?
The Chiefs.
Those are the games that the Chiefs have been winning for
Right.
the last.
I would say the
3 years.
Chiefs. Average scoring game. Nothing out of the ordinary. Teams are just an average scoring game. Who wins that one? Probably the Chiefs, right?
Also,
All
the
right.
type of game.
Shootout. I think
Eagles.
Philly.
I'd
Yeah.
say the Eagles.
Eagles.
Really
That would mean that they hit some big passing plays,
Mhm.
and that's something I
They
don't know.
probably should have won 57 if Hurts didn't fumble.
Yeah.
Complete blowout. Who wins that game? I say Philly.
That's the crazy thing for me because like I can't see the Chiefs getting completely blown out, but I can't see the Chiefs blowing someone out either.
Oh
Yeah,
I
my
think the
God.
Eagles
I
are
would
the
be
ones that can
shocked
do
if
that.
the Chiefs win by double. No, maybe if they win by 10, but like if they win by
I
10
mean,
touchdowns, I'd
I
be
would, I would love it. I would love it if they do. I haven't enjoyed.
I could see the Eagles winning by like
Those
13,
limits.
but I
I
can't.
haven't enjoyed a single halftime show. Like during Rihanna's performance that I just saw for like the first time last night, I was like praying in a corner. Like I haven't.
Oh my God! When the Patriots played in the Super Bowl, I would not like think about halftime.
Oh yeah, no.
And then the last one though is overtime. Who would win that one? And
The
the
Chiefs.
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 So if it's 4-1 or 5-0, you kind of have your pick. If it's 3-2, which it sounds like
It's 3-2.
all of us are,
Yeah.
it isn't necessarily that helpful. But I feel like next year, whenever I'm torn in a game and I run through that, that's gonna be probably pretty helpful. But maybe not for this one. Maybe not for this
Yeah.
one.
I do like that. I do like
Yeah.
All right, so going through, it took a while for me to get Super Bowl picks right on the Super Bowl special.
Yeah.
But I've learned something over these last few years. That there's a guy, he wears a red jersey. Sometimes it's a white jersey,
It's white.
that. Right, it is.
and it has the
Now,
number.
ask Michael, he'll tell you.
Yeah,
I
Michael.
like the red jersey.
Michael will tell you the jersey matchup of a Week 6 game in 2003.
Yes. I kid you not. When Michael talked about the
And I'm not talking about a primetime game. I'm talking about a game that was on
Yeah.
local TV in
Yeah.
Denver and Atlanta only.
He doesn't know who won the game. He doesn't know anything about the game, but he knows what jerseys they were wearing.
That's crazy.
The first thing he said to me was, "Man, we're having the same Super Bowl uniform matchup we had a couple of years ago. And then
Yeah.
he goes, oh, and the same teams are playing too.
Same vibes.
Like, yes, the same teams are also playing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how uniforms work.
Same
Like,
network.
the
same
Eagles are
jersey.
going to go. You think that like the
You
Browns
still
are going to
don't
go
know.
out there and wear the Eagles jerseys?
Right.
Well, they should have worn like Kelly Green or something. That'd have been more cool. Like the Rams. I know the
You're not
Rams.
allowed to.
The Rams had a loophole that year where they wore those
Yeah.
blue throwbacks. Yeah.
And I've learned a couple things through the years. It's that doubting the guy who wears number 15 in white, red, whatever it is not the smartest decision. I said this in the NCAA tournament last year when I was looking at that region with Gonzaga, McNeese, Kansas, and Stanford. Do you know, Josh, Nico, do you know what I'm about to say here? I'm going to feel like an idiot, an absolute idiot, if I pick against Bill Self and Bill Self wins.
I see what you're saying.
I'm going to feel, and this is something that I do in a lot of games when I'm just picking games. Like, am I going to feel dumb if I pick a certain team to win, to lose, and then they win? And that's kind of where I've been at with Kansas City now for the last year or two. I feel like it would be like if the Eagles go out there and win, which they absolutely can do. They are
better than the Chiefs.
Yeah, that was the first thing that I said to both you and to both Nico and Josh. I said that the Chiefs, the Eagles are a better football team, just straight up.
Yeah.
But the Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes. The Chiefs have Andy Reid. The Chiefs have Steve Spagnuolo. The Chiefs have a way that they play football games that seems like they can turn a game into their game no matter who they're playing against.
If it was between the two best teams, it would be us and Philly. And it's not.
Okay, you had to work the Ravens in there.
I did.
And
But do you not agree with that in terms of just talent?
I think it's fair.
I guess AFC, NFC, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
And the Lions are up there too. Yeah.
Yeah,
if they were healthy. Yeah.
I think but the most complete teams. I think it was the Ravens and the Eagles.
The Eagles.
I think the Eagles are more complete than the Ravens were.
Yes, the Eagles were the most complete
Yeah.
team in football this year.
Yeah.
But here we are in the Super Bowl. And it's not, and winning one game isn't about having the most complete team.
Right.
It's all about matchups.
It's about matchups. It's about having the right game plan. It's about it's about who do you trust in certain spots.
Mm-hmm.
And the Eagles might be better, but I'm going to feel like a donkey if I pick them and Patrick Mahomes wins his third straight Super Bowl. So I'm going Kansas City.
Yeah.
I'm going 23-21.
Interesting.
And I'm picking Mahomes for MVP. Nico.
Is Travis Kelce retiring, by the way? I think so.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
I think
mean,
if they lose, he might come back. I think if
Yeah.
he wins, there's no way he's not. I think if he wins, I think he's definitely done.
I don't know though.
I don't really see what he has to
He
do.
was
He's been like throwing
Yeah.
different answers out there. So
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's true. When I heard him at media day, and he was like,
he was like, "I'm gonna play 5 years or something." Yeah.
"Yeah," he said
Yeah.
something that definitely made me think that he wasn't going to retire.
Yeah.
But I do feel like this would just be the perfect time if they.
Oh
win.
yeah. No.
I mean,
Right off into the sunset. 3 straight rings.
Unless he wants to play
Not even
off
John
that big
Elway
step
run
up.
off into the sunset on 3 straight.
He could get it tonight, but like, he's like 100 yards away from like passing Jerry or something. For most
He's a couple hundred away from that, but he's
100,
two touchdowns away
two
from that.
touchdowns. Yeah.
All right.
and then they're going to draft Mason Taylor in the second round, and he's going to go for 800 yards as a rookie.
Yeah.
All right. Who's next for predictions?
Well, I got
Okay.
my kickoff show in an hour 20 where I'm going to give mine. So I'm going to hold off.
Okay.
All right. So you can do the Kirk Herbstreit thing that they do on College Game Day.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be really interesting.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I 100% agree with Sam. Like, if I were to pick the Eagles I would feel so much better about the Eagles proving me wrong. And that's kind of where
Yeah,
I've been, like,
sure.
especially after last year when I made a video on Christmas after the Raiders lost and I said the Chiefs are done. And then I convinced
Dynasty is
myself-
over.
Yeah, and then I convinced myself that the Dolphins could win, and then I convinced myself that the Ravens were going to take care of business.
We should have.
Sorry.
We should have though.
But then I picked the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, and I was right. And then I said after the Chiefs won that Super Bowl, they were going to make it back. They were going to have an easier time this year. I've been in Kansas City's corner since August. They were my Super Bowl pick.
They were mine too.
I think I picked them every week of the year, except for the Christmas game against the Steelers. And then once again, I look like an idiot when Mahomes shreds them. So
that's probably the best game you played all year.
I can't do it. And I just really do have a lot of faith that the Chiefs being able to get through the regular season without having to show their hand very often, like that's going to come into play. And I just really trust Mahomes against Fangio. Like, it's just not a concern for me. Like, it's not very often where an elite defense goes up against a quarterback, and I don't have any concerns. Like, I think he's going to dice them up, as he's always done against Vic Fangio, and as the Chiefs are designed to do against these zone defenses too high. Like, he's literally spent the last 3 years studying for this test. Like, that they traded Tyreek Hill. Yeah. Vic Fangio is like part of the reason why they traded Tyreek Hill when you really think about it. So, I mean, he's basically caused this total shift. I mean, we were talking about that earlier, but I trust Mahomes, and I think that Spags is going to have something for Hurts. Like, like Eagles fans think I'm hating on Hurts, but it's just the reality that I think he's bound to make mistakes that Mahomes is not going to make. Oh, yeah. And I think Saquon's going to get his. I'm not willing to say that he gets contained. I think he's going to go for close to 100 at least. But I'm still going to pick the Chiefs just because I trust them more. I trust them more. The Eagles are 100% more talented, but I just trust this matchup for the Chiefs offense. And that's really, if you're going to pick the Chiefs, like if you think the Chiefs offense is going to be fine, I think you have to pick them.
Sam,
Josh, what are your keys to the game?
Sam, I just had a realization.
Go.
Belichick, Giants, DC against the Bills. Thurman Thomas, one of the greatest game plans in the history of the NFL. Thurman Thomas, league MVP running back for the Buffalo Bills. This is the first time in the 4 years stretch in the Super Bowl. That offense ran through Thurman Thomas. As good as the rest of the offense was. Belichick had the genius idea, and I think in his entire head coaching career, this still probably is the most impressive thing he did. His entire game plan was, let Thurman Thomas go off. Let's shorten the game. Let's not let the Bills do anything except run the ball. Just let the Bills run down their throat. And then they have less possessions, and the Giants won the game 20-19. And it was when they were significantly worse than Buffalo. I just had that realization. It's very similar with Saquon. It could be. Don't be surprised if the Chiefs are almost like, let's give that up. We feel better because the more they run the ball, the less possessions they're going to be.
Yeah.
And they play right into our hand.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where it's like, that could be, I might have just uncovered it. And I've been torn the whole week. I've been leaning Chiefs. I think I'll give one that pick. I think I just figured out my reasoning behind.
I mean, what if Spags comes out and just brackets the receivers and Saquon?
Where it's like, we're not going to let A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith beat us.
Yeah.
I mean, my one thing about that is Saquon is like my one thing about that is that Saquon isn't just like a run down your throat running back.
Yeah, right.
Like dance around and break away. Yeah.
He is the most 60-plus yard touchdowns in a season ever by, I think, 2 or 3. He has 7 of them. I think the record was 4.
I mean, he's the Aston Genty of the NFL.
Right.
Yep.
Really, this year.
Right. So
in order for that to work, they then have to contain Saquon, where it's like, let him go off, but don't let him hit a 70-yard touchdown.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know if that's
I think they can still win if he gets like one long touchdown.
Yeah,
but you can't let him have 3 of them.
Yes,
no, that's not going to happen. Yeah.
He's had multiple in a fair share of games.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You can't let him hit multiple of those.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can contain him a little bit and just say, we're not going to let the Eagles do whatever they want. We're going to either give them that or now that I'm thinking about it, Do they go the other way and say, we're not letting Saquon beat us?
Well, teams have tried that this year, and it just
And it
hasn't
hasn't
worked for
worked.
anyone.
So
So
might as well try the other way.
All right, Pranav,
Yeah.
your pick. I think we know what you're taking.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the Chiefs 27-23. I think that this matchup kind of plays into their favor just off some of the things that we've talked about, just like the style of play. And I think that something that hasn't really been touched on is the Eagles have been really favorable as far as turnover differential has gone this playoffs, and they really like Love had 3 picks against them. They played like Stafford in a blizzard, and then they had like crazy fumbles against Washington that put them in favorable fields. Like that game was kind of close at halftime, but they just continued to run up the turnovers. And so yeah, I don't think that's going to happen against the Chiefs just off what we've seen. Like if they do, all the credit to them, but like the track record shows that the Chiefs are going to limit just how much they give the ball away. They're probably not going to give the ball away. And so I think that's going to be a trend in this game, which plays into their hand as well. And I think that Spags really could make life kind of hell for Jalen Hurts with these blitzes that he has planned up. And so I'm ready. I think that the offense has a good, I think they'll have a good plan for attacking the zone defense that Fangio runs. And I think it's going to be a close game, as all Chiefs games typically are. But I think that they're going to see some success tonight. And we see the first ever Super Bowl three-peat. And so the Chiefs win 27-23.
That's so crazy to say out loud.
Yeah, it is.
I forgot to give my score prediction. I have 27-24.
Because
Really close.
Is it for Elliott? Are you counting for Elliott missing?
Yes. I was originally going to go 27-23, and I was like, I don't think Jake Elliott's going to make 3 different kicks. And I don't think they're going to ask him to make 3. Like, I think they just go for it in a lot of spots.
Yeah.
That's what they do.
And then the last thing. Anybody got an idea? Anybody got a prediction for Kendrick Lamar's set list? Any guests he brings out?
Well, other than SZA,
Lil Wayne.
which we know.
Yeah, I think he said.
I mean,
wasn't there supposed to be a
I
surprise?
saw a TikTok that was like, what if Drake comes out?
I put that on Twitter. I put it on Twitter. I was like, guys, it's Drake.
On TV. And then Jake Fool comes out.
Drake comes out and they perform "Not Like Us" together.
That would be
They
incredible.
hug. We're all in this together.
The obvious one is Lil Wayne because everyone wanted him to do it anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Or like The
I'm not
Weeknd.
too well versed when it comes to.
Yeah.
I'm not a ball knower in music.
Me neither, but
Yeah.
it could be interesting.
All right, guys. Thank you so much to Nico, obviously, for co-hosting this once again. Thank you to Jackson. Thank you to Sklar, Pranav, Josh, everyone for coming on, and everyone for tuning in. This has
Tune
been
into mine in an hour
yeah.
on Twitch.
This has been the 6th annual Sam Fetterman Super Bowl special. I think I went the first 4 and got the picks wrong every time.
Wait, did I just complete the three-peat for your show?
I mean, yeah, this is
Yeah.
your year.
Nice.
And you, yeah.
First,
The
I mean,
yeah, the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles. You guys don't need to know where to watch that game. You know where to watch that
You
game.
think yeah.
Just make sure that before that game, you all tune in to some college hoops. Some excellent games on right now.
Yeah.
Maryland.
I like how every other sport just shuts down though once we hit like 4. It's like we're not even gonna try.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Even Goodell.
Maryland 46, Rutgers 32 towards the end of the first half right now.
How's Maryland looking? Maryland's looking still good, right?
I just said they're winning by 14.
No, but I'm saying like we're gonna
Yes.
make a run.
I mean, I don't know who's going to make a run, but Maryland
Are we good enough to make are we a team that should make a run?
should. I don't know, but good enough, absolutely.
Let's go. Go
And
Terps.
then we've got GW up at the Riley Center at halftime right now. But you guys can go watch that on the USA Network if you want to watch A10 basketball, which I know you all do because that's why you tune in. That's also why you tune into Brackets, Bubbles, and Bit Stealers.
Like Nick Bosa said, that'll be a great battle that I won't be watching.
the best college basketball podcast out there. You can check that out at some point. We don't know when our next episode's going to be, but Nico,
you need a podcast, man.
I've been telling him this for
I'm
years.
pondering it.
I've been
You
telling
need
him this
one.
for years.
It's
But
percolating.
we got to close this out. I've got a women's college basketball game to go to in like 15 minutes. So I will see you guys next year for the next Super Bowl special and this week for the next episode of Brackets, Bubbles, and Bit Stealers.
I'll say you want to disappear for a year.